You got challenges that you're going to run across.
My father actually was a very, very proficient basketball player. So, I did all the stick and ball stuff, that most kids do in the neighborhood, right? Because that was easily accessible and that's what your friends did, right? So you went out there and did that. I was in the inner city. I didn't have friends that had go-karts or race cars or anything like that. But I knew there's something that I thought was really cool, and that's all I thought about. So fast forward a little bit, I got my driver's license, when I was 16. I couldn't wait to get it. And it was game on for me. It was the Fast and the Furious before it was a movie. I was doing all sorts of crazy things in my parents' street cars and, in the regular, family cars and stuff like that. And then I bought my first street car of my own. And by that time, we had moved from San Jose, California to Oakland, California, because my father moved from his position at IBM to a professor of chemistry at UC Berkeley, at Cal Berkeley. So we lived in the Oakland Hills. And so I bought this little Mazda RX-3, this little rotary engine car, little sports car, and I modded the heck out of it. I did all the suspension work, the engine work, aerodynamic works with spoilers and all that kind of stuff. And I became known as pretty proficient on the streets of Oakland. But somebody said, listen, you have a lot of talent. I see that, you're beating everybody, but before you kill yourself or somebody else, take it to a racetrack, right?
Yeah.
I would have loved to go on racing, but I didn't have the financial wherewithal. And that's why I went to Berkeley, because my father, who was a theoretical chemist, he exposed me to computation and computers. What he did is something called quantum Monte Carlo, which is a study of the collisions between atoms and molecules. So my father's a PhD. He's a very heavyweight dude, right? But he was right there at the cusp of the high-tech boom. Back then, the power of our smartphone that we hold in our hand took up basically the whole basement of an IBM building, right? You started talking about huge computers with mag tapes and disk drives and all that kind of stuff, but not nearly as powerful as what we have in our hands. So anyway, technology evolves. But what it did is it kind of said to myself, listen, if I go and get this piece of paper from Berkeley with engineering degree, I could probably write my ticket as far as being in a financial position to buy a race car. And that was why I did it. I didn't want to go, become a doctor or a lawyer or, anybody in business and marketing, because it takes too long. That career takes too long. I figured if I got my behind kicked for 4 years straight at Cal, I could come right out there and buy a race car. And that's almost effectively just what I did.
Wow. Now, when I think of race car or racing period, and I'm not, a lover of the sport. Probably when I think about race car driving is when I get on 285 in Atlanta. I'm trying to stay in that outside lane when they're gonna run over me. But when I think about race car driving, I think of Talladega, I think of Daytona, I think of Indy was it Indy 500. Mm-hmm. I can't picture any big races out west. Are there, because I don't, was it, was those things really happening out west at the time? Like these big races?
Yeah, absolutely. NASCAR was not big on the West Coast whatsoever. One iota. When I was younger, I had no desire or ambition to race in NASCAR. So the simple fact that I did make my name primarily in NASCAR is really just mind blowing to me, because when I was a little kid and I saw NASCAR on ABC's Wide World of Sports, which was the only channel that, covered the Talladega 500 or the Daytona 500 or the Southern 500 at Darlington, I saw a bunch of cars running around in a circle trying to stay off a concrete wall. And I was like, that's not racing. Racing is like driving on the street. You turn right, you turn left, you accelerate, you brake. You don't just drop it in fourth gear and try to stay off a concrete wall, right?
Right.
And then when I saw the people that were the drivers of these, NASCAR stock cars and the fans in the stands with the Confederate flags and all that kind of stuff, man, I couldn't have seen a bigger turnoff for me, right? I was like, that's an oaky, redneck sport.
Yeah.
I had no interest in it. I for me, what was cool were sports cars and open wheel Indy cars. Like you mentioned, the Indianapolis 500, the single biggest sporting motorsports event, and I think maybe sporting event in the world. But I saw my career in racing going to open wheel like the Indy 500 or sports cars like, the biggest sports car race here in this country is the 24 hours of Daytona, a once around the clock endurance race that takes place in Daytona, Florida. So I saw myself racing in one of those two disciplines, never in a million years racing in NASCAR, but lo and behold, that's where I wound up. That's where the opportunities presented themselves. And I really made a name for myself in that sport. But listen, to get there, I mean, it was so difficult to try to, well, let's rewind the clock. Before even racing, just going through the curriculum at Cal Berkeley. I remember we graduated like 600 students in the College of Engineering when I graduated, and I could count the number of Black students on one hand. Okay. A lot of us attempted to get a degree in the College of Engineering, but we were weeded out. You know, we didn't cut it. And we wound up getting maybe just a computer science degree from the College of, Letters and Science, from the College of Letters and Science, as opposed to the College of Engineering. So I have a legitimate dual degree from the College of Engineering. So it was hard, man. I mean, you know, the best of the best, the elite of minds from not only in our country, but around the world. I was competing against, you know, a lot of Asians as well as whites. And, you know, the thing that they had were strength in numbers. When I was there, like I told you, I looked to my left and I looked to my right, and I was virtually the only one. So I just had to keep driving, you know, using the mindset and the dedication and determination to get through it, because I knew what this piece of paper would do for me in terms of really what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be a race car driver. I didn't want to be an engineer. And later I became a research and development project manager, you know, managing a couple dozen engineers. That wasn't what I wanted to do either. But, you know, it's what I had to do to get to where I wanted to go. You know, it's the sacrifices that you make.
Yeah, that's the point I want to kind of emphasize throughout the interview, is that every step you made had to be a sacrifice. Make sure that you like and subscribe and hit the all button and all that kind of stuff, because we're going to have a lot of good interviews on this podcast.